Hey now, everybody, it is Drac with DDO Players News, where we talk about the latest from the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons Online, the tabletop, and beyond. I am joined tonight by a ringer. I have brought in a ringer for this show because we're going to talk about Dragonlance. And as you heard in last week's podcast, I'm not a huge Dragonlance person. So I'm like, who do I know that would know Dragonlance?
Oh, boy.
Evilbeeker came to mind because he is the historian of all historians.
I am not. Oh, maybe a little.
I mean, come on. Come on.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
We've had plenty of conversations about old school D&D, and you know lots of things. So, okay.
That was front and center for some of them. So
Exactly. All right. Yeah. So we are going to talk about Dragonlance tonight. The new book is out. More on that later. We do have a little bit of game news for DDO, so we'll get to that real quick. The Night Rebels is coming back for an encore. Been posted over on the forums that the Night Rebels event will return for 1 week, and it's going to begin next Thursday, December the 15th. That's going to be late morning, early afternoon Eastern time, and it will run through December 21st. It will also be available on the Hardcore server as well. If you're interested in doing Night Rebels over on Hardcore, it is going to be turned on there as well. So once again, Night Rebels coming back for 1 week, December 15th through December the 21st. Maybe I can get off my butt and actually run it and get the horse that I wanted, because I didn't actually get the horse this year.
that was the one thing I got when I ran it.
That's
So
the only thing I wanted, and I couldn't run it, but now I have the new computer and it's working good. Knock on fake wood that's in front of me here. We'll see if I can't get the horse.
and I think I think it's coming back, wasn't it? Because like 2 servers were down for like a day or 2 or something weird like that.
Yeah, that, and then also there was something to do with hardcore, because it was running during the last hardcore too, and people couldn't transfer their characters off of hardcore to another server. Then, to turn in their items, and so this is their answer to that. So they're bringing it back. So look for that coming soon in game. And last week on the show, we did talk about the Festival was coming, and the Jester has now arrived as well. So you can trade those copper, silver, and gold festival coins, I should say, for those cookies and other rewards. The Jester is found in several different places. The Harbor, atop the Leaky Dinghy Tavern, House Fiarlan in the Livewood Theater, House Jarasco near Cold Wake Pond, House Deneath to the west of the Night's Watch District, and House Kandarik in the Locksmith Square. I always go to the Leaky Dinghy because I like climbing up on the roof. I don't know, maybe it's just me. That's what I always go to. But
That is the best name for a tavern in Stormreach.
I agree. 100% I agree. So that is all of our game news. I said we didn't have a lot, just a little bit. So yeah, enjoy Festivals and enjoy Night Rebels. I'm trying to think if Night Rebels and Festivals has ever ran at the same time before.
Probably not.
And I think this might be a first. So write this down on the calendar. All right, let's jump into From the Dungeon. And the meat of the show and why Evilbeeker is here. Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen, is now out and available at all of your friendly local game stores. And as Beeker found out today, Walmart too.
Yes, and they do at least my local Walmart had the book and had the Spelljammer box set as well.
I was in Walmart today too, and I didn't even think to look to see if it was in mine. So if you have a Walmart, you might be able to pick up Dragonlance there, but would you want to pick it up? That is the question we are about to answer.
Well, maybe. A lot is going to depend on your taste, I guess.
Depends on your taste. It depends on who you are, but more on that in a bit. But first of all, let's get a little bit of the history of Dragonlance. And like I said, that's why I brought you on, because as I said last week, I know the Dragonlance novels. That's it.
So the Dragonlance novels, which came out in '84, kind of kicked off the whole Dragonlance thing. Although the first module of the original 16 series, so there was DL 1 through 16, which kind of coincided with the first 3 books. The first module actually came out in March or April, but then the first novel came out in November. After Drac asked me to help him with the review of this product, I did listen to a couple other reviews and read a couple other reviews online. Yeah, people really need to check their sources a little bit before some of them do reviews.
No.
One guy said, "Oh yeah, the DL1 novel kicked off all the different or DL1 module inspired all the Dragonlance books," and I'm like, no, it was all developed at the same time. And then somebody else said, yeah, and the Dragonlance role-playing game was inspired by about a dozen Dragonlance novels. And I'm like, no. There's over 150 Dragonlance novels, published short stories, anthologies. It is the largest spread of novels that TSR ever did. Even into the WotC years, there was a couple that they were still doing. I mean, the books themselves go from 1984 all the way to 2011. Tracy and Margaret's newest book, The Dragons of Deceit, which I'm holding in my hand, that is their first Dragonlance book in over 10 years. But the first 6 books are kind of really what kicked it off. So you have Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragons of Winter Night, Dragons of Spring Dawning. Those were the first ones. And then the Legends books, Time of the Twins, War of the Twins, Test of the Twins. So if you know anything about Dragonlance, there was the 2 brothers, Raistlin and Caramon. They're the twins, so that those 3 books kind of focused on them, whereas the Dragons of Autumn, Winter, and Spring kind of focused on the group of adventurers, which is where you get Tasselhoff Burfoot, Flint the dwarf, Tanis the half-elf, Goldmoon the cleric, and I'm forgetting the elf's name. I'll remember it sooner or later. But that kind of, and the novels ran from 84 to 86. So you had 1 to 2 novels coming out every year, or at least 2 novels coming out every year. And then after that, it kind of took off. So you had, there was over a dozen authors putting out Dragonlance books. And if you go out to there's a wiki page for a list of Dragonlance novels. You can see the full list there. I mean, it is very, very extensive.
Which I was surprised because I didn't realize there was that many of the novels.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, when I was working at TSR, I remember there would be one. We would, whenever there a new month's worth of products come out, they'd put like the employee pile. It was up on the second floor designer area. It was a big pallet they'd roll out, and there would be at least one Dragonlance novel there every other month. Easy. So there was, and to be honest, I couldn't keep up with them. There was just so many between that, and then that's when, like 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, that's when a lot of the Forgotten Realms ones started coming out then, too. So there was quite a few novels that the book department was putting out. But and then there was the actual game product. So the whole game product line started with DL1 through DL16, and DL1, and there's a bunch of different names for the various products. So there's Dragons of Despair, Dragons of Flame, Dragons of Hope, Dragons of Desolation, yada yada yada, all the way down to 15 and 16, Mists of Krynn, World of Krynn. The last 2 of this series were more reference than anything. Honestly, everything kind of wrapped up in Dragons of Triumph, which was DL14. But there was other things that they wanted to add to it. I do not have my copies anymore. I think I mentioned it on the show once before with you, Drac, that my basement flooded
You did, yeah.
Shortly after my TSR days, and all my Dragonlance stuff was gone.
Which is very sad.
It is very sad. And it's just one of the things that I never looked to replenish because honestly, my gaming group, we played the first 7 or 8 modules. And then we kind of learned about Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were like that.
And we started playing Forgotten Realms a lot. But I do remember reading through them. I will tip my Spotted Cow beer as I'm holding my hand here. Hold on.
You bastard for that, by the way.
I will tip my Spotted Cow beer to Pine Leaf. He was correct. They did have a kind of like what they did with the new Dragonlance. They tied it to the board game, which you're going to talk about. But it was DL8 is where they started using Battle System.
Okay,
which was the old war game miniatures type system for mass combat. And Pine Leaf was right, and they did it in several of the modules. I think DL8 for sure. Probably, I think it was 11, 12, 13. It was like a spattering in the back end of it. So, and what Drac is going to talk about is the board game, which was released simultaneously with this. There are portions of the book where you can jump to the board game. And I guess, Drac, you'll have to talk more about how that actually works.
Yeah, I will.
So that was the first group of adventures that kind of came out for Dragonlance. But then they started putting out supplement stuff. So you have the Dragonlance Adventures hardcover, which is in the old style of the old Player's Handbook or Unearthed Arcana Monster Manual, where there's a hardcover book. I actually have my Unearthed Arcana sitting over here. It probably ran about 128, 150 pages. I couldn't find an actual page count, but then that was kind of like a DM source book. So if you wanted to, after the quote unquote war was over, you could run other adventures because there was still, good and bad things happening in the land. I'm sure all the bad guys didn't disappear and all the bad dragons were back and stuff like that. So there was this kind of a intro source book for that. Then they had an atlas and a player guide. There was probably over 20 adventures between 89 and 93 that they put out for Dragonlance. So there was quite a bit of history as far as adventures and background and things like that. And again, my Dragonlance stuff is gone. So, but I do remember enjoying all these adventures. We played a couple of them, I think, but there was an option in some of them to play them as generic AD&D adventures. I think actually that's what we did. Then in 96, they developed this system called the Saga system. And it was kind of more of a role-playing, combat-less game, where you had cards and it was like a storybook that you followed, and they published several releases for that. To be honest, I'm not sure how well it did. I don't know if that was something that Drac. What's the name of the guy that just wrote the book on D&D sales and stuff like that? You remember his name?
Oh, yeah. Hold on.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if there's any information on the Saga system stuff in there. He talked about a lot of what the sales numbers were for a lot of different D&D products, but I don't remember it being super popular. But it was actually very well written. A lot of it was tied to the novels written by Gene Raby, who's one of my ex-bosses at TSR. And then I think towards the end there, they started releasing them with hybrid AD&D rules in case people wanted to convert them.
Ben Riggs is his name.
Yeah, there you go.
And the book is called Slaying the Dragon.
Right. And there's some good information in there. But I don't know if there's anything for Dragonlance or the Saga system. I don't own a copy of the book.
I don't know. I have to pick that up. I reached out to their PR, but never heard back. So I guess I'm going to have to buy it.
Then following that, I mean, that kind of took you to 99. So right at that point, you were actually into the WotC year. So WotC year started late 97. But it was probably released because the products were already written. That was typically products were sometimes written a year in advance before they actually got released. And I wasn't there for the beginning of the WotC year, so I couldn't tell you. But then they did the Leaves of the Lost Home books from 2003 to 2007. Those were just stories. I think some of them were written by Margaret. A lot of illustrations, a lot of Elmore art in them. They were pretty books. If you were a Dragonlance fan, you picked them up. And then starting around 2003, Margaret Weiss started her own role-playing game company because she was able to parlay a third-party license with Wizards of the Coast to do a Dragonlance campaign setting for 3rd edition of D&D or 3.5. And they did over I think it says 3 years on the wiki, but I think it was more like 4 years. That they did over 30 Dragonlance products, a lot of adventures, a lot of source material products. There was quite a few people that worked on those projects. I know Jeff Grubb worked on some of them. Jamie Chambers, who was part of Margaret's core team. Some really good authors, and it lasted until 2006. I know Margaret refocused her company on a couple of different other projects, and then she closed the doors sometime after 2010, I think. But that's kind of a high level history of Dragonlance, and what I feel Dragonlance brought to the gaming world. It was another view of Dungeons and Dragons. So you had Gary's view of Dungeons and Dragons, and then you had Dragonlance, and then that kind of spawned other things like Ravenloft and Forgotten Realms and then stuff like into the 90s. But the novels for me were, I just fell in love with the world just from the first 3 novels. And the second 3 were pretty good as well. But the first 3 to me are just classic, and those classic covers by Larry Elmore were
Yep, that's when anybody mentions Dragonlance, I automatically think of the Larry Elmore book covers. Like, that's the first thing that comes to mind to me. Just amazing.
Yeah, and everybody wanted to be a Kender. Everybody wanted to be a black-robed mage. After reading those novels, but it was a really good balance of characters and plot lines and things like that. And just kind of a jump ahead, the Shadows of the Dragon Queen, it basically takes place during that time period. So it is part of the initial War of the Lance that started out in Dragons of Autumn Twilight. So it's not after the war, it's during the war. So that may or may not appeal to some players. But that's where WotC decided to start with Dragonlance. I mean, if they're going to do another product or a follow up, kind of like the way TSR did it. So they did the books, the modules, and then they started off with a DM source book and a player's guide and an atlas of the world and things like that. I don't know if they're going to go down that route. They kind of did it with Ravenloft. They put out Curse of Strahd, and then they came out with the Wagner Richten's Guide source book, which we did on another podcast. But yeah, I mean, that's a real high level overview. If you want more details, obviously check out the wiki entries. They're pretty thorough. Although some of the links to the DL 1 through 16 modules, they don't have links in them. If you want to see what the covers look like or want a synopsis of it, drop in a DM's Guild or Drive Through RPG. I mean, and they have them all there. I don't know if they're print on demand.
I think I looked. I think some of them are and some of them aren't.
Yeah, you know what? I now that you say that, I think that is the case.
Which might be a licensing issue. Maybe I'm guessing.
Yeah, you and I talked about that.
We did actually. Yeah.
That there was, unfortunately, one of the things that TSR probably didn't do right, was when they purchased art. So sometimes when they purchased art, and I bumped into this when I worked on the Spellfire cards, they only bought art for one-time use. And if they did that, then there might be problems with why stuff isn't on print on demand. The electronic release, that probably skirts some other legal corner that I'm not aware of. But there was always a huge deal if you had to reprint a product, or if you wanted to come out with another version of a product, or a second edition or third edition, whatever. And sometimes it was cheaper to get new art than to pay some artists for a second use of their art. So that might be the reason why some of those are not. But it looks like they got a pretty good offering.
There's a good chunk of them that are on demand prints, though.
Yep. But it looks like they got everything in here, so that's actually kind of cool. That they were at least if you weren't lucky enough to score hard copies of some of this, there are PDF versions out there, and it looks like I just punched in Dragonlance into DM's drive-through, and it comes up with 261 entries.
Yeah, so I'll have links in the show notes for all this, like the wiki, and then to drive through for all of the Dragonlance stuff too. So
yeah,
you can find it all in the show notes. It'll be easy. Click and you'll be there.
Yeah, so there is just scads of history. I mean, probably almost too much to go through, right? But if you wanted to run a Dragonlance campaign, you might find yourself looking at some of the older materials. If you wanted to run a campaign beyond Shadow of the Dragon Queen. So, but that is my kind of like my Dragonlance history portion of the show.
Well, with that being said, we have the new book that is out now. Mm-hmm. You kind of hinted at it. It does take place in the War of the Lance. They give you a little good overview at the very beginning of the book, kind of what's going on. You get enough, like if would happen to be unfamiliar with Dragonlance totally, the second chapter of the book will lay that out for you. It lays out the adventure for the DM as well, so you will be ready. So let's talk about the book. As I said, it is out now. You can get it at any of your friendly local game stores, online, Amazon, any other Walmart, apparently. I need to check my Walmart. I will check that and report back to see if my Walmart.
Well, I sent you a picture.
You did. I am going to put it actually in the show notes, and I'll put it on the screen of the YouTube version of this video right now, actually. So there you go.
And just and something else we talked about, Drac, just as full disclosure, the copies that Drac and I have are review copies from Wizards of the Coast.
Yes, I was just about to say that. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I was given the version that had the book, the game, and then the DM screen. So I had the whole thing, and I actually had an extra copy of the book because they sent me the alternate cover, and then the game comes with the book. So Beaker got the other review copy. So that's why he's here helping. So there you go. So thanks, Watsy, as always.
And you took the Lord Soth cover.
I did, because that is a cool as hell cover. I did.
It is a cool cover.
Yeah, I told Beaker, I'm like, sorry, dude, I'm gonna keep this one. You get the standard cover. Sorry.
So
it's all good.
Yeah. So why don't before we talk more about the book, why don't you talk a little bit about the board game? Because I think that needs to preface a couple of different things.
Yeah. It ties in with the board game. The board game is called Warriors of Krynn. By the time this episode comes out, my unboxing video of the game will be out as well. I probably got around to get that edited, and I'm going to upload it. So you can watch the unboxing video if you want to see all the components and what they look like. And then I'm going to do a standalone review on the site too of the game. But it's designed by Rob Dabbio and Stephen Baker. So if you know anything about board games, you know those two names. Rob Dabbio, like Risk Legacy, Pandemic Legacy, Axis and Allies. I think it was Pacific is the Axis and Allies he did. He's done lots of stuff. Of course, he is one of the principal components behind Restoration Games that are, taking all the old games and renewing them. The latest one they just did is Return to Dark Tower. He is also known in board gaming circles as the father of the legacy game. And then Stephen Baker, Hero Quest and Heroescape are his, I would say, biggest things Stephen Baker's known for. So WotC got some big names to design this board game, and it shows. More on that in a little bit, though. So what the game is it's a full-on, full-scale battle game. And what you do is at certain points of the adventure, if you have a choice. You can either just run your big battles in the game through your RPG play, or if you want, you can jump over to the board game and run the battles there. They tie it in, and what happens in the book is there is little sections where it goes. It starts on page 71 if you actually have the book. It will tell you about, okay, this battle's coming up, and then there's a sidebar box that says Warriors of Krynn scenario number 1. And then it gives you a little short scenario, and then you jump over to the board game, you grab that book, you set the game up for the scenario, you look through all the rules of each scenario in the game is going to have a different rule, and then you play the battle out, and then after that is done, you jump back to the RPG. I like that because it gives something else to do, but I'm going to start off with a big negative right now. It's way too fiddly. If you were going to do this as part of your RPG sessions, I would suggest you have a whole separate table set up with the board game already set up for what scenario you know you're going to run. Because it took us, I had 4 of my friends, we went through the first scenario, and it took us probably a good 20 minutes just to set the scenario up. The board game is super fiddly. So there would be no way I could see any DM just pausing their game for 20, 25 minutes and say, we're going to run this battle, but give me about 20 minutes to get ready. So my suggestion, if you're going to do this, which I think a lot of players would like because it brings something different to your D&D game, and I think it would work well. I would actually like to try it once to where I would just run the first part of the RPG and then jump into the game to see how well they blend together. But I think they're going to blend pretty well because they give you enough information in the book to jump right into the board game, and then the board game scenario book also has, it's like if you're running it as part of the campaign, change it, little tweaks here to make this happen and do this, but super fiddly. So it says you run the scenario and then you jump back into the game, and then at another section in the game, it's gonna call back to, Warriors of Krynn scenario X number. And then you jump, and you're just going to do that. You're going to jump back and forth. I think the way they did it is going to work well, but just keep in mind, super fiddly. There's a lot of setup. One thing I liked that they did, the minis that are in the game, they are the same size as the standard RPG mini. So what you can do, if you would like to, your players can actually bring their characters over into the board game side of it. Use their characters, use their minis, and then the game gives you instructions on how to do that. And then on your character card, there is a little thing to where if, they're using their characters, use these stats from their characters. So that, I liked that a lot, because then it's going to keep you submersed into the world. It's going to be your character fighting that battle against the dragon army, And you're going to make a difference, hopefully, in the RPG side of it, too. If you don't want to do that, you can. They have instructions on how you can just use the characters that are provided in the game. I think that would you would lose some of the fun part of it, though. I think it would be better to bring your own character over and your own mini because you're more attached to it. But they give you options both ways. That's a quick look at the game. Like I said, I think it's going to go well. I would actually like to see it in practice and actually do it once to see how well it works. But just by reading the book and reading the board game scenario book, I think they're going to merge well. Just keep in mind, lots of setup though. So
can you play it? Can you play it standalone though?
You can. Yes, you can. There is full-on scenarios, and then they also give you instructions on how to do that too. If you want to just ignore the RPG part of it, you can play it as a standalone board game and just play through all the scenarios. Or you can. They suggest to play through scenario 1 all the way up to the end, which I should have grabbed my board game actually to see. I forgot how many scenarios there were, and then you start out at the like level 1, and then you progress as you go through the scenarios. And there's different rules and there's different decks of cards that you use. Once you progress all the way up, you're at veteran status. And then you have a whole set of different cards and different rules. So yeah, fully standalone if you would like to be, or you can integrate it with the RPG. And they also give you instructions on, if you want to integrate just maybe 1 or 2 battles and then do the rest fully in the RPG, you can do that. And then if you want to jump back, but I would assume if you're going to do it, you're going to do it for everyone, because I don't see why that would make sense to just say, hey, we're going to play this first battle in the game so you can get more of a feeling for what's going on, and then we're just going to ignore this the rest of the time. I don't see many DMs doing that. It's like I said, it's my biggest problem with it is how fiddly it is. So you're going to have this set up ready to go, and it takes up a lot of space on the table. So you're going to need a whole separate table. Or if you have a game table that has a vault in it, you could have it set up underneath, have, your regular table on the top of it. And then once, the battle is ready, you can pull that off, and then you're ready to go right there. That would be pretty awesome, actually, I think, to do. If you have a game table that would do that. If not, just have another table set up with the board game ready to go if you're going to run it in the RPG.
So do you want to go through my actual book review?
Yes, sure. Let's jump into that, and I'll kind of chime in what I think too. Like I said, I'm going to do a full written review as well, but okay. I'll chime in. So
cover wise, a nice piece of art with a red dragon. I mean, for the standard cover, you got a picture. You got the image of the Lord Soth in the background. There's a credits page. There looks like there's quite a few people that worked on this project. They do offer a special thanks to the TSR creative Dragonlance creative team over the years. I'm disappointed there's no Elmore art in this book. That is one thing I will say straight up. The art is very good. Don't get me wrong. The good stuff about this book, the maps, the art, the layout, the quality of the book, and the attention to detail and the layout is pretty standard with other WotC products.
Exactly. If you bought any of the 5e books, you know what you're going to get.
But I think that the layout on this one is actually just a tad bit better. I think maybe in some cases they're learning from their mistakes a little bit. And I was not disappointed in that aspect of the book. Although, like I said, I would have liked to have seen the cover from Larry, or at least a couple of interior pieces. Larry's getting up there in years. I'm not quite sure how much he's actually doing nowadays, but he did do the cover for Dragons of Deceit, the novel. So he did come back and do the cover for the novel for the Tracy and Margaret's newest book. So let's kind of go through by chapters.
Sure.
and kind of given so the adventure itself. If you're familiar with the original Dragonlance, so Dragons of Autumn Twilight through Dragons of Spring Dawning, it followed the heroes as they went through and kind of fought the evil forces of the Blue Dragon army, which were led by their friend Kitiara, who was like the dragon headlord or whatever you want to call it, that was in charge of the Blue Dragon army. Well, this is about the Red Dragon army, so this is like in a whole nother portion of Krynn, not the same area of that the books are based on. So they've taken this adventure and they've kind of said, well, we're going to redo what was done before, but we're going to do it in a different part of the world. Oh, one thing I will mention, in the back of the book, there is a giant pull-out perforated map, which is gorgeous. I really like it.
All the maps they have done for all the previous books have been the same, just amazing.
And this is supposed to be a player's map too. And you can pull it out. I mean, if you ironed it out a little bit, you could probably frame it if you really wanted something cool for your gaming room. But it is a very nice looking map. Is this the first map that they've included in a book like this?
No. The last several books have had maps.
Okay. So, and I haven't picked up the last couple of books from WotC. But that is actually a huge bonus. So the first chapter in the book, like Drac mentioned, it's kind of an introduction to Krynn. Honestly, it's not a very good one, in my opinion. There's so much more. There's so much more information that could be put in here. And some of this stuff, what I would have liked to see with this product was an appendices for, I don't want to call them irrelevant charts, but charts that you don't need right away, like languages or currency, or what was the big one that I had a problem with? Pronunciations. It's like all of a sudden in the middle of a chapter they'll throw in a whole page of pronunciations. They threw in a whole page of pronunciations. Yeah. That stuff should go in the back. That it just and speaking of back, there is a table of contents, but there is no index. Now, this isn't a source book, it's an adventure book, but if you're going to spread things throughout the book, which I'll get to a little bit more here, then having some kind of a basic index might be helpful for finding stuff. I was disappointed in the classes and races. Now, based on your show last week, Drac, they do use the word races in here still. So the change in terminology to species, that's a D&D 1 or 1 D&D, I should say, thing. So in this book, they still call it a races, although it is race. So there is only one race in this book that they're presenting to you, and that's the Kender. And it to me, it's a popularity choice because everybody loved Tasselhoff. But I think they've missed a little bit with some of these other ones. So the very short introduction to dwarves, very short introduction to elves. I guess you use standard D&D stats for these guys. Although they have sea elves in here, which if you want to be a sea elf, you got to own Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse book, which I thought that was a little cheesy. But the two biggest things about the races that I think were missed opportunities was gnomes and gully dwarves. So if you're a fan of Dragonlance, you might be familiar with gully dwarves. Gully dwarves are dwarves that can't count higher than 2. They're comic relief. They're also, in the old days, they were really fun to play if we were playing events like in the RPGA or something else. And they make awesome NPCs. They are completely omitted from this product, which I think is a mistake because that was a staple in the old Dragonlance games. The other thing that I was disappointed in was gnomes. Now, today in D&D, everybody thinks of gnomes as tinkerers and guys who build all these giant clockwork things and whatever. Before Dragonlance, gnomes were just short guys that could throw illusion spells. That's all they were. Dragonlance is the product that turned them into tinkerers. Now, there is a, spoiler alert, there is a gnome tinkerer at one point in the adventure, but that's the only place that they show up, and there's nothing else after that. There are a couple of magic, and I'm doing air quotes here, magic items that are gnome tinker items, but they're not, to me, they were irrelevant to the whole adventure. But I think having a section on gnomes and tinkerers, I just think that they missed out on the classes and races section. This is a very thin offering of the races and things like that. But there are two that they do cover a little bit, and that is the Solamnic Knights and the Mages of High Sorcery. So this book kind of almost makes it a requirement that at least one person in the party, possibly more, is a Solamnic Knight or a Mage of High Sorcery.
And that is my biggest complaint on the book.
Yeah. It is very... I get it, because the adventure is in that part of the world.
Right, and it's very important, but don't make it that important. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it is very... It is slightly... How do I put this? I was disappointed because number one, it wasn't laid out well on how to do it. Like, they have backgrounds and then feats are mixed in with it. And the other thing is stuff with the mages. And if you're familiar with Dragonlance, the mages have to take a test. In the old days, it used to be 3rd level. I think it's different in this book. I think it's like higher level. But when you reach 3rd level, you had to take a test, and then you would either wear a black robe, a white robe, or a red robe for good, neutral, or good, neutral, and not good or neutral. So, but it's spread throughout the whole book, the whole thing with the becoming a Mage of High Sorcery. I would have rather have had that be all condensed into one section. So you got to jump back and forth to kind of figure out, how you're going to do that kind of stuff. And then let's see here. And then there's also, they introduce a new sorcerer subclass called Lunar Sorcery. It's okay, but I just think it's too little too late. I mean, if you're gonna do, I would have rather seen the Gnome Tinkerer here, or the Gully Dwarf, or something else that was already established in Krynn. I don't remember there ever being anything regarding lunar sorcery or lunar magic in the old Dragonlance. I could be wrong, but it's not ringing any bells in my head. And then the last thing I'm going to say about the classes. So part of the history of Dragonlance is, long ago there was this cataclysm, and the cataclysm, as a result of the cataclysm, all the gods stopped talking to the people of Krynn. So clerical magic was gone for hundreds and hundreds of years. And part of the original Dragons of Autumn Twilight and the very first DL1 Dragonlance module was for a character named Goldmoon, who was a female, I don't want to say like a tribesman person. Like she was like a, not necessarily civilized, but like a wandering range kind of. I don't want to use the word barbarian, but and she discovered clerical magic, and then that brought the gods back to Krynn. It set a chain reaction that brought the gods back to Krynn, and then people could play clerics again. Well, the book here kind of skips over all of that. Although it doesn't. But there's no mechanic for how to do this. Although they do add a background of what did they call it here? Hold on. It is called Divinely Favored. but you don't get it until your 4th level. So you start believing in the god, and then at 4th level you can do like 1 first level cleric spell. So if you don't have a cleric in the party, well, you know how that usually goes when you don't have a cleric in the party. But they do offer you in chapter 2, which I'll get to in a second, the ability to just say, "Oh, I'm a cleric." But they kind of breeze over the whole thing where clerics were gone and now they're back to help the people of the world fight the Dragon Queen. And again, I think that's a missed opportunity because that's one of the things that made Dragonlance kind of unique during the day. Any comment, Drac?
No, keep going. I'm gonna chime in here in a second.
Okay, so chapter 2, like Drac said, chapter 2 is kind of outlines the whole adventure itself. But then it does something that we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen in a WotC product, or to be honest, a product for that matter, something called a prelude. So,
which was weird to me. Like, why do this?
Well, we did this sometimes in the old days, but it was called 0 level. Okay, so you were considered a commoner who wanted to be an adventurer. You know, you're a 15-year-old kid who puts on his dad's armor and grabs a sword and goes out and tries to be a hero. Well, you call that 0 level. And then you did something that would then make you a first level character, and then you'd be more powerful, and then you start your adventuring career. That's kind of what this is.
Yeah, I can see that. It kind of gets you, I guess, invested into your character and into the story.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So they give you 3 options for preludes. So one is called Broken Silence, which is where, and I'll read this right out of the book, heralds of the gods return and provide participating characters with better understanding of their relationship to the gods. So that's designed for clerics, druids, paladins, and other characters with God-given powers. So that's kind of how they mold clerics into the game. But when you conceptually start the game, you're not even a cleric. You have to, if somebody in the party says, "Hey, I want to be a cleric," well, you say, "Well, no, you're going to start out as a 0 level nothing."
Right.
You know, kind of. So then they're like, "Oh, well, maybe I don't want to be a cleric." So it doesn't give any. I think there's a missed opportunity there. Then they give one for like spellcasters, and then there's one that says any other character. And what it is it's just a role playing event where you go somewhere, you do something, and as a result, you gain this additional understanding about your place and your character's race and class and place in the world and stuff like that. There is an opportunity in one of them for combat, but it pretty much says you should run away. So, and you're going to see that a lot. You actually mentioned it earlier, Drac, about running away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you're going to see a lot of running away in this book. So really, you don't do anything, and then suddenly you're second level. So you start out.
It's bizarro world to me. Like,
yeah.
Here's a free level, basically. It's what you're doing to your players, right?
Yep, that's exactly it. And that I've never seen that before. Usually, for first level, you test somebody with. Okay, let me just kind of give you a little bit of adventure writing 101. When we used to write adventures for the RPGA, there was a list of things that we were supposed to include in every adventure: a combat, a role-playing event, a skill-based or some other kind of skill-based event. Like you had to figure out how to get a tree out of the road, or you had to disarm a trap or something like that. And then you would say like, in a 4-hour event would be 2 combats, 2 role playings and stuff like that. But no, it's like 1 role playing event. You're suddenly second level. I would have liked to have seen more there, but you're right. It's basically a free level. And then from that, it goes to chapter 3. So before I go any further, I want to say that the adventure as it stands is not a bad adventure. But if you want to make it work in beyond the scope of this book, like with more Dragonlance history or better options for characters or something like that, there's going to be some elbow grease that needs to be applied here. And we're going to talk about that after I kind of go through the chapters and stuff. So you kind of start out the adventure. Everybody knows this gentleman whose name I have to find here, and you basically knew this guy, and you're Ispin, and you're attending his funeral, and that's kind of where everybody meets, and it's in a town called Vogler, and which is part of the board game, correct, Drac?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay. And then there you meet a knight of the Salamic Order, and they kind of befriend you and stuff like that. And you meet the whole first part of this chapter is basically just giant role playing event. And at the beginning of each chapter, there is a character advancement. So it isn't XP advancement, it's achievement advancement. And it'll say the characters start this chapter at 2nd level, and at the end of the chapter, they're 4th level. So as it goes through the whole thing, you get to the point where there's one combat, and then they're 3rd level. So there's all this role playing, one combat, and then 3rd level. I just think they're cheesing out a little bit on the level advancement, at least in the beginning.
I detest advancement achievement or achievement advancement anyway.
I'll tell you what, if it's done right, it actually works. I'll say this much. And it's no big surprise that I play Pathfinder, and Pathfinder level achievement. Some of it you'll get some levels that are easy, but then you'll get some that like last forever. And they do a much better balancing out of it. And some of the earlier adventures did a good job as well. This one, they're kind of serving up loops on the softball, and the players are just cranking it out of the park to get to the next level. So by the end of that chapter, the characters are level 4, and there's like 3 fights in the whole chapter. So the first couple of levels a little bit easier than you would expect. Now, without spoiling a whole lot here, from the town that the characters are in, they move to another town, and there's a whole lot of role playing in that town as well. And the characters meet a mage of the Black Robe, which is supposed to be the bad guy. I'm not quite sure why they chose Black Robe there, to help out any mages that still want to be a mage of high sorcery. I would have rather seen a red robe or a white robe mage there.
Thematically, it would have made more sense, but
right, because I mean, unless somebody knows absolutely nothing about Dragonlance, they're going to know that Black Robe wizards served the Dragon Queen during the War of the Lance. That wasn't an absolute, but it was a pretty good bet. And then you move on to chapter 4, which again, a lot of role playing, a lot of information, 1 or 2 fights, and then suddenly you're on the next level. There is a really good fight in this one that I think was very well done, with the Gnome Tinkerer that I mentioned earlier. I really liked that encounter. After chapter 4, things start to get a little bit more gritty. But one of the things that I didn't like about how some stuff was presented is you found out something was about something in the book, but just the sentence punched in somewhere, and it wasn't. It was like you go through the whole book of chapter 4, where you're going to have a party of a couple of knights. It's going to have at least 1, maybe 2 Knights of Salamnigat, and then one of the last sentences in this chapter is, "Oh, the people of the town don't like knights because of past dealings with them." It's like, I read that sentence, like, why is that even in there? Because you're just throwing it in there just to throw doubt on NPCs that are trying to help out the city. It didn't make any sense to me. And there's a couple instances like that throughout the book. So then after that, things actually start. The first 4 chapters, to me, were very easy. and not very challenging at all. But after that, it does kind of get a little bit more gritty. Chapter 5 is a giant sandbox adventure area where the party has to go to these different locations and piece together a puzzle to find a location called, I want to get the name right, the City of Lost Names, which is actually a very important part of the adventure. And once they're there, they start piecing together more information about who's leading the Red Army, the Red Dragon Army, and how better to defeat them. And then along the way, they get conscripted into I don't want to say an army, but an opposing force to the Red Dragon Army, which is probably where they jump into the board game again, I believe, correct?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
And that, like I said, when I was talking about the board game, that is done real well, how they combine the two. Yeah. I will give them kudos to that for sure.
But, and then scattered throughout here, again, more information on tests of the high sorcery and stuff like that. I wish they would have condensed that all down. It really, it just made it, to me, it just made it a messy organization of what should have been one section that somebody could read and then know everything that they need to know about what it is to be a mage in Krynn. And maybe a Dragonlance historian out there could say yay or nay, but they're using slods in this book.
I was going to ask you about that.
I don't remember demons, devils, slods, summoned creatures. None of that was really part of Dragonlance. Now, maybe high-level sorcerers would have them guarding treasures and stuff like that. But this is kind of more of like a demon/alien creature type of deal. And they got it in here a couple of times. And I saw that, and there's actually an illustration of it. And I was like, God, that's weird. I don't remember slods as part of this. However, as you get deeper into this book, you start figuring out that Lord Soth and his undead and his evil servants are kind of one of the forces behind the Red Army, and he's part of the force that's really leading the Red Dragon Army to victory. And I'll more on that in a minute. But one other thing that I think is a missed opportunity here is, again, I mentioned it before, they give you the option a lot to run away. And one of the encounters is with a black dragon. And basically, they don't even tell you, they basically tell you you're supposed to run away, which I don't see a Knight of Solamnia running away from a black dragon. Or there might be players that don't know that. And they do put one line in here that says, on Krynn, chromatic dragons are considered creatures of legend and should be avoided. But to me, that's not enough.
And what D&D party is going to say, ooh, a dragon, let's run? Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, they're going to say charge.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is about when they're like 7th or 8th level. And now, if you look at the stats for a young dragon or an adult dragon, they're not wimps. They got way over 100 hit points. Adult dragon almost has 200 hit points. Yeah, that's a lot for a party, but putting it in there, some knucklehead's going to charge the dragon, and then that's going to be it. So I think that should have been done better. They do use dragonelles in the book, which, if you're not familiar with the creature, it's kind of like a lesser dragon, which I think is more along the lines of where it should be in this part of chapter 5. So, like I said, 6th to 7th, 8th level. I would have rather have seen that than putting in a dragon that you actually have to run away from. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I love the sandbox area. So the sandbox area is kind of where the adventure picks up, and that, unfortunately, it's about halfway through the book. Now, as you move through the rest of the adventure, you're kind of hitting a combination of Lord Soth's creatures and what are called draconians. Now, don't think of your 5th edition draconian. think of more of a dragon that's more of a human. I guess they're kind of based. The 5th edition Draconians are kind of based on Dragonlance Draconians, but the Dragonlance Draconians, they're all evil. I mean, there's none of them are good at all. And there's several different kinds, and some are fighters, some are casters. And I will say one thing about the Draconians in this book: they're nasty. They are not easy to fight at all. And you get a clump of them, and you could be in big trouble. And they do start to pop up in the adventure the deeper you get into it. And I'll just say there's a couple more dragons that show up, and those there's also an opportunity there to attack them or run away. Now, this is at higher level, but I think that the adventure itself, the playability, and the role playing versus fighting versus exploration, it gets better the farther you get into the adventure, and that's why I said that the adventure's, it's a good adventure. It just needs a lot of elbow grease, and it's mostly in the beginning. Now, my biggest problem with the adventure, Drac, what was the one thing you liked about the end of Curse of Strahd? But what was the best thing about Curse of Strahd at the end?
I would have to say meeting Strahd, fighting Strahd, and killing Strahd.
You got to fight him. So you don't get... They give you stats for Lord Soth, but you never fight him.
Weird design choice. I agree with that. Yes. 100%. As I was flipping through the book, I'm waiting. All right, here we go. We're building up to this big fight. No, we're not.
Yeah. Now, you do have to fight the head of the Red Dragon army. And her name, they give her a name called Red Ruin, which is, I'm sorry, that's a horrible name. I would have read, because Kitiara was a great name, even though she started out as a non-dragon lord and then kind of became one later.
That is, if somebody went to Google and did RPG name generator, is what that is.
Yeah, it does kind of smell that way. But I mean, the battle with her and her red dragon, which is a young adult red dragon, not an adult red dragon, is a good fight. I mean, it's a good final fight. I really wanted to see him fight Lord Soth, especially since he's on the cover of the book.
Well, and he plays a big part in Dragonlance too. I mean,
yes. I mean, even if you fought him for 2 rounds and then he ran away, it's still 2 rounds. Now, and I think I told you this, when I ran Curse of Strahd, I had the worst case of dice rolling in the history of any game I've ever played. And my players killed him in 3 rounds, which is incredible. I mean, I rolled the worst on the planet. They rolled, I think almost every attack roll was a crit that they ran.
Oh, jeez.
It was crazy. And my players were so pumped at the end of that adventure. It was a great feeling because they're like, oh, that was awesome. That was great. And yeah, you get to kill the head of the Red Dragon army, but yeah, whatever. And you finish out the book, you know, you're fighting them at 11th level. I mean, that's a pretty decent level to fight. Now, is Lord Soth going to probably take out 1, maybe 2 of the party? Yeah, probably.
Oh, probably.
But it's the conclusion of the adventure. So I don't.
Not like you're fighting a no-name guy either. I mean, yeah, he's going to be tough.
Yeah. I don't like the choice there.
Yeah.
So and then once the head of the army is killed, then the adventure is pretty much over, and the party is victorious, which is good. And that kind of ends it where it is. So it's only one. Well, and I guess it probably takes place over the sandbox area could easily be maybe a week or more. So you're looking at maybe a month's worth of time. I mean, the War of the Lance ran a lot longer than that, if I remember correctly. If I remember correctly, it ran several months. So it's only a small portion of it, but like I said, it's a great nostalgic adventure. I think it gets better the more you get into it. If you're more combat than role playing, I think the beginning is going to be very boring for you. But I think overall it's a solid adventure. Could this have been an adventure that wasn't Dragonlance? Sure.
Oh, absolutely, it could have been.
I could take this adventure and I could put it in a generic world, or maybe not so much the Forgotten Realms, but yeah, it.
Oh yeah, you could take this into a homebrew world, change some names, tweak some things.
Yeah.
You would never know it was Dragonlance.
Now, the back of the book has a couple of things too, as far as the appendix go. So there's an appendix for magic items, and some of these magic items, I don't understand why you even have them.
Understand a lot of those.
I mean, the only one here, honestly, that makes any sense is the Dragonlance, the actual Dragonlance, the magical lance. There is a item in here that assists the party at the end of the adventure, which is great. It's a required item, so it's obviously there. But after that, the NPC monster section is pretty good. There's a really nasty creature in here. I won't go into too much detail on for spoilers.
There was a couple monsters in there that I really liked a lot.
Yeah, but like I said before, the Draconians are pretty buff. I mean, you're talking about creatures. I mean, the bottom of the barrel guy, that they fight at first and second level, it's got 22 hit points, and if you know anything about Draconians, when they're killed in Dragonlance lore, you'll know that is present here too. But I mean, the boss Draconians are like pretty tough. I mean, and of course it's WotC NPC stats, so they're not assigning hit dice to them, but they're pretty boss. I do have one problem. There is one black robe wizard here, and he has 137 hit points, which would probably put him pretty high level, but they don't show his spells. And I don't know if I was missing something there or what, but I think that one got by the editors. And then what's Drac's favorite part of the whole book? Sidekicks.
Yay, sidekicks. Waste of space.
So they introduced something called sidekicks. And these are to quote unquote flush out a party of a party in case you don't have enough players, which is fine. I call them NPCs. Why you got to come up with a name like sidekicks? It just reminds me too much of The Tick.
I didn't think about that. That's awesome.
Where they had the superhero and then the useless sidekick. Or what was the other one? The superhero high school or whatever that was with Kurt Russell, and where they had the superhero high or something like that was called. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had the hero classes and the sidekick classes.
Right.
I mean, and they basically say, hey, if one of your players die, they can use one of these guys. But I'm going to tell you what, when we used to have, I mean, this kind of reeks of hirelings. And when we did hirelings back in the day, they were just monster fodder. Where okay, my sidekick runs up and checks the room for traps as he runs in boldly.
Right.
And to me, I don't know. Whatever. If you find it useful, that's great. But it's really like 10 pages of filler.
They could have used that space for a lot of other things.
Fill out the back of the book. And in the back, there's there's an appendix with concept art in it, which people love. I mean, some people really like concept art. I can take it or leave it. And then there's some maps, and then the pull out the big map in the back that you can pull out of the thing.
And the concept art WotC's been doing for a while too. That's been in the past several books as well. So that's nothing shocking to see.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of people that actually like that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, I draw stickmen. I'll be the first to say
exactly.
it. I wish I could draw. I do not have that skill at all.
I am not artistic in the least bit.
Nope, not me. Now, there's one thing, and Drac, you and I talked about this last weekend.
We did, and I was hoping you were going to bring this up. If you weren't, I was going to.
Yeah, so if I was to run this book, I would either have to spend a really lot of time going through everything and kind of molding it for my players, especially the options to play races and classes and stuff like that. Or you can spend another $50 to $100 and go over to DM's Guild and buy stuff there. So one of the things that has kind of been a trend for me for Wizards of the Coast products, and I think it might have started with Strahd and then kind of went forward from there, is what Wizards of the Coast will put out a book, like the Dragonlance book, but then they supplement it with stuff at DM's Guild. Now, DM's Guild to me, can run hot or cold. It really depends on who's doing it, what the content is, things like that. If you liked Candlekeep Mysteries and the way things were done in there, you know what? Maybe you'll like DM's Guild stuff. But it seems to me like this is becoming more of a trend. So there is, let's see, is it the Player's Guide to Dragonlance? And then there's, hang on, let me get back over to DM's Guild here. So there's Player's Guide to Dragonlance, Dragonlance Companion, okay? And that's out for sale now. That's $20. There's Tasselhoff's Pouches of Everything, which is another $17. And then there's other small little ones. You could probably expect more to come up. There's Treasures of Krynn. That's like $4. But it seems like if you really want to flesh out a campaign, you're going to need something else. So you're going to have to go out in here and spend more money at DM's Guild. I would at least get the Dragonlance Companion. There's also a whole nother slew of these projects coming out in 2023. And some of them actually might be pretty good because Richard Knack, who was he wrote several Dragonlance books. And apparently he's dipping his pen into the Dragonlance DM's Guild stuff, and you're going to be able to get products that are either, he's either the project coordinator or one of the authors or both. I'm not quite sure. But at least they have a notable source that's maybe working on some of these products. Or you can go out and start investing in the old Dragonlance PDFs. Or if you have them on your shelf. But by itself, this would need a lot of work, and it might need a little bit more. My players would want to be more invested in the world. I know for a fact that I'd have at least one guy that wants to be a gully dwarf, one guy that wants to be an elf bowman. Well, what are the special abilities? I mean, is it all standard D&D? Well, that's kind of boring. Why can't I have something in Dragonlance that's new and cool and different? So hopefully these other products kind of address that, but it's more money. Drac and I also theorized that some of these people doing DM's Guild stuff must be getting copies of the books way ahead of time so that they can figure out what's missing and then put together these companion products. I don't have a huge problem with that, but it kind of gives certain people an edge over stuff that gets released after a product like this is released.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So on a scale from 1 to 10, for me, I give it a 5. Only because I think that there's so much more that they could have done. The core of the adventures is pretty good, but I think the individual pieces drag it down and make it difficult to run, or the missing pieces. I don't think this book by itself is enough to get somebody excited about Dragonlance. I think you need somebody that knows about Dragonlance or has a history with Dragonlance to flush out what's missing and make things a little bit more exciting. Again, big gigantic question mark as to whether or not this is the only Dragonlance product we're ever going to see. So
I will be interested to see what happens if they do, like you kind of brought it up before, they kind of went back to Curse of Strahd with a couple other books. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen with this as well.
Right.
Or if this is going to be a one-off, hey, we did Dragonlance, everybody's good now, let's move on.
What they're not saying is, hey, there's all this 30 years of Dragonlance history out there that you can still dip into if you really want to do it.
Right.
But some people aren't that way. I mean, some people might play this. I'm sure there's going to be Adventures League stuff that centers around this. But for my money, since I've already lived through this once, going back to the War of the Lance to me is, I would have rather seen them do a fresh, clean start in Krynn and say, even if it's 10 years after the War of the Lance or 20 years after the War of the Lance, and say, hey, here's all this. Now, there is, and I don't know if you noticed this, Drac, there is one character in this new adventure that appeared in the original Dragonlance books. One and only one.
Did
you catch it?
Been so long since I've read those books that I probably not.
It is in the sandbox area.
Okay.
And it is on page 111. And it's Dalamar the Black Mage.
Okay.
He was a black robe wizard that was kind of like an assistant to Raistlin after Raistlin got really powerful. And I think in the end he turned on him. I don't remember. It's been a while. But yeah, I'm looking like Dalamar. Holy cow. So there you go. But yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
As somebody that is familiar with Dragonlance and has played Dragonlance, is this Dragonlance?
I would say there's enough Dragonlance in here to make it Dragonlance. But I think if you played it and know about it, you'll put your own history into it.
Okay.
And make it even more. But if you've never played Dragonlance, you've never read the books, this is just going to be kind of a dry adventure. I mean, dry is maybe a bad word. It's going to be a more standard adventure fare. You know, here's this stuff going to be, because they do lead you through here. I mean, the sandbox area is pretty cool. I like sandbox areas because it gives you a chance to put extra stuff in there and it makes it breaks it up from the pieces have to go here, then they have to go here, then they have to go here, and then they have to go here, and so on.
I've spent more time looking over that than I think the rest of the book, to be honest. The sandbox area is by far my favorite.
Yeah, because they give you a map and then they say here are these other areas and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, and every DM has their own style and things they put into an adventure, right? So some people keep track of food and weight and movement, and some others don't. But a good sandbox area is always a good, and it's done pretty good. I mean, it's done well enough that it makes it probably for me the best part of the book, other than the last chapter. So I like that part of it, and like I said, that's where for me the book picked up considerably. Because before that, it seemed like it was more of a cakewalk, you know, as long as they could win the one battle that they needed to go up a level. So, like I said, it's a good core adventure, but I think to really make it shine and go from a 5 to a 7, 8, 9, or 10, you're gonna need more Dragonlance flavor to it. At least I would need more Dragonlance flavor.
So there you go. That is a look at the new Dragonlance book, available everywhere. And like I said, I'm going to have a review on the website coming soon of Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen book and Warriors of Krynn, if I can speak, the board game, coming over to the site. Well, and look for that unboxing video coming soon too. Anything else about Dragonlance you would like to add?
Other than the fact that in celebration of this review, Drac's finally going to give away the dragons that I sent him.
I am, yes. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to mention you specifically as the bearer of the dragon gifts. You want to talk a little about what these are, and then I'll tell everybody how they can win.
Yeah, so I do 3D printing. Which I think has been said on your podcast a couple times.
I thought it has, but I wasn't for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, remember I gave Pine Leaf the pig?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And I gave you a succubus, and I did your hero medal, and we talked about that when I was on before. But anyway, Fat Dragon Games, who makes 3D model files that you can print, they have what's called the Great Dragon, and I printed one in green and one in red, and I sent them to Drac. So they are for him to give away, and then Drac will be kind enough to put a link somewhere to my Etsy store, where if people like some of my 3D prints, they can buy stuff there. I don't have any dragons for sale at the moment, but I do have other gaming accessories. My dice towers are pretty popular, so...
Yeah, I will do that in the post I'm going to put up for the giveaway. I will definitely link to your store so they can see all of the awesome things they can purchase that you 3D print.
Yeah, but they are not assembled.
Correct. Yes.
So you do have to glue them together. It's like the wings have to be glued on, and the little hooks on the end of the wings, and the neck and the head have to be glued together. But there's instructions on Fat Dragon Games website how to do that.
And I will link to that in the post as well.
Yeah.
So how we're going to do this is the red one is going to be a patron-only giveaway. So if you are one of our patrons, you will automatically be entered into this. So if you want to win the red one, you will have to be a patron to do that. So I'm going to haven't decided when I'm going to start the giveaway and end the giveaway, but it'll be coming up soon on the site. So you'll see that. So you'll have plenty of time to jump in. Even if you want to jump in for the $1, as long as you're a patron, you will win that. And then the green one is going to be for anybody. I am going to put the caveat. It is going to be US only because I have to pay for postage, and there is no way I can ship international. I'm sorry. If somebody internationally really, really, really wants to win one of these, shoot me an email, Drac at DDO Players, and we'll discuss maybe shipping or something. But I'm just afraid international shipping would be crazy.
It would probably be cheaper to buy the file from Fat Dragon Games and find somebody where you live to print it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, unfortunately, going to be US only. So as I said, I'll have all the specific instructions on a post that's coming up, but there's going to be a green one for everybody, and then the red one is going to be patrons only. So if you're not,
so how are you gonna do the green one? You gonna have everybody just email you in or something, like I want a dragon or something?
Yes, yep, that is exactly what I'm gonna do. Yeah, and that'll be in the directions. Yeah, you just send an email to podcast@ddoplayers.com and just say I want the green dragon. And it's easy as that. And I will actually allow if patrons want a better chance to win, patrons can also enter for the green dragon as well if they would like.
Oh, very good.
So you maybe, and then if you're lucky with the RNG, maybe you'll win one of them or both of them, or it's all going to be up to the RNG. And what I'm going to do is just put everybody's name into the random wheel picker online, and then I'll just pick it that way, and then I'll contact you, and then I will ship it out to you. Once again, US only. Green one for everybody, red one for patrons. All the specific instructions and more information will be coming soon over to ddoplayers.com. Look for the dragon giveaway post. So thanks to Beaker for sending those in and getting me off my butt to finally give them away.
Well, you were moving all summer.
Exactly. I had a lot going on, but yeah, he's a little behind the scenes baseball for you. He's been on me for a while. He's like, are you ever going to give those away? And I'm like, I am. I promise I will. So I thought, what better time than the whole Dragonlance thing to give some dragons away? So, and they look pretty awesome too. I took the red one out of the shipping box that he shipped it to me in and looked at it, and it looks pretty good. So,
yeah, I mean, and the red and green, you don't necessarily have to paint them either.
Right, correct. But I mean, you could paint them really easy if you would like to.
Yeah.
But once again, I don't paint. I wish I could. I have friends that do amazing work with painting. I just never got into that. It goes back to the whole not artistic thing, I think.
Right. Well, I used to paint years ago, but my eyes are so bad right now. As I've gotten older, I just can't do it anymore.
So with that being said, let's, since it's towards the end of the year, we decided we would look back at Kickstarter. Kickstarter has been huge this year. For RPGs in general, there's been a lot of RPGs coming out on Kickstarter, and I know Beaker has several RPGs that he thought, hey, these are some of the coolest RPGs that came out this year on Kickstarter.
Yeah, so much to my the chagrin of my budget for gaming stuff, I did get in a couple of Kickstarters this year. Plus, there was a couple other ones that people were very excited about, and I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm in one Kickstarter right now that's going on its fourth year. It'll be fourth year in a couple of months, and it still hasn't fulfilled. So that was depressing. But yeah, I'll tell you about it later. But I was excited about the Kickstarters I got in this year. Now, I usually don't get in Kickstarters unless I know that it's a reputable company. It was fulfilled quickly, because, you know, I've been burned once and, you know, fool me twice type of thing. I'm not gonna. I'll take a chance sometimes, but I'm too curmudgeon with my money in my old age to go down that road anymore. So, I was in four Kickstarters this year. So I started out with the Avatar Legends, which said records for Kickstarter. I was over 2 million, I think. And that one is just fulfilling now. They're starting with, because the company is out of Europe, they're starting to fulfill out there first, and then it's going to be US after that. But and that's based on the Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Legends of Korra world. And I loved that show. I thought it was original, and I thought it was well done. I mean, some people didn't like it because, it's a cartoon. It's too anime-like. Nah, those are garbage excuses. It was well done. It was a great story. The role-playing game itself, and Drac, you have a PDF copy of it, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah. It's very role-playing orientated. There is combat, but it's kind of like achievement level gaming. And it does it very, very well. I actually really like the way that they're doing it, because I'm not as much, my history of gaming is not in that direction, but this made me excited for that type of gaming. So that we have the PDFs already. We're just waiting on the books and stuff like that. Will I run it someday? Maybe. I'd probably be more interested in playing it, to be quite honest. But I was really, because I like the anime cartoons so much, not the horrible movie that came out. I really wanted to invest in this one. The second one was the Old School Essentials box set.
That looks so good. Oh my God, that looks so good.
I just got mine.
Oh, sweet. I'm glad that actually.
Well, and there's a lot of people that are pissed because their fulfillment house is not sending these out very fast. We were supposed to have these at the beginning of October. There's a lot of people that are upset that these didn't get out faster. But if you don't know, Old School Essentials is kind of like old basic D&D, what they used to call BX, or Cook Mahove D&D, which was the old expert set. It's really stripped down D&D. There's no feats, there's no skills. There's classes with some abilities and monsters and treasure, and that's it. It's a very old, like the title says, old school D&D, and I really like it. I need to be playing more of this because Pathfinder's kind of grinded me out a little bit because there's so much with feats and skills and rules and stuff like that. It's just, this is so basic, but it's so fun. The next one I did was the Pirate Borg. Now, if you remember Mork Borg, or as it's supposed to be pronounced, Merc Bore, that came out a couple years ago, kind of an open source horror-based role-playing game. That's what this is, but it's kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean type horror. And it's actually really, I actually really enjoyed it. And we do have the PDF. We're just waiting for fulfillment right now. And if you see this out there, pick it up. I know the guys were at, was it Gamma? No, PAX. They were at PAX this last weekend. Was it 2 weekends ago? I don't remember. But it's well done. And you also, and with some of these Kickstarters, and Drac, I don't know if you were in any of them, but there's some of the goals and the stretch goals in the Kickstarter were like for Avatar, we got free accounts on what's called Demiplane, which I'll go over in a second. And with Old School Essentials, you got the rules and the core adventure that's from the book in a tabletop, virtual tabletop. Not Fantasy
that's
Grounds,
kind of nice.
Yeah, not Fantasy Grounds, which we play a lot of.
Yeah.
the one that I set everything up in is called Alchemy, which isn't bad. It's more of a visual virtual tabletop. And then what's the other one? What's the other real popular one that shoot, if you said it, I would pick it up in a second. It's not Roll20. I'll think about it in a minute. But you got codes for the free purchase of the rules through that system. So that's kind of cool. And then the last one that I think did I finally goad you into picking it up or not, Drac?
You did. I got into it right at the very end.
Was the Monty Python co-curricular medieval reenactment program. That's what they call the Monty Python Kickstarter for the Monty Python role-playing game. I used to sneak into the living room late at night on Sundays after my parents went to bed, and so I could watch Monty Python on PBS when they used to run it.
I miss the days when they used to run Flying Circus. I miss those days.
Because they had some questionable stuff in there.
Well, yeah.
And they ran it on PBS in the market that I lived in at the time, like at 11 at night.
Yeah, it was the same here too. Yeah, it was late at night
So I would sneak out into the living room and make sure mom and dad were asleep, and I'd turn the TV on really soft and I'd watch Monty Python. So yeah, so those are the four that I got into. Now there's a couple of lists out there with what are the top Kickstarters from this year, and I only grabbed like the top ones. I mean, the number one was Avatar because there was so many people in it and it made so much money. It was just ridiculous. It was almost $3 million. The next one that was listed was Blade Runner, which is from Free League, which I like Free League games. If I get a chance to play it at some point, will give that a try. Like if I go to a con and somebody's running it, I probably won't pick it up though, just because I own so many games. But the Blade Runner one kind of intrigued me a little bit. I'm kind of interested to see if they're going to take that any further. It probably was popular because of the name, honestly. And Free League's been doing some pretty cool stuff. The next one was Cowboy Bebop. I was never a Cowboy Bebop fan, so I really couldn't jump into that ring. I don't know about you, Drac.
No, I never. I mean, I like anime, but never got into Cowboy Bebop at all.
Okay. And then there's one called Die RPG. Now, I've only read about this recently. I need to do some more research on it, but seems to be quite a contingent of players out there that enjoy it. And then the Monty Python one was kind of like the tail end of the year. One thing I will say is not a lot of D&D on this list. Now, there was a fair number of D&D Kickstarters. And did I mention one down? Yeah,
you're talking about like modules or adventures for D&D,
or just D&D or 5th edition compatible,
right? Okay.
Type of. I mean, old school essentially is D&D, but 5th edition compatible Kickstarters. So I don't know what that says about the industry. I mean, D&D runs hot and cold. Has been running hot and cold since its inception. I think we're at a high point right now. I think the movie's going to kickstart it again. And one D&D is probably going to hopefully bring in more players. I mean, whether you like it or not, D&D brings players to the hobby, and then players will expand out and look at other role-playing games and things like that. So what's good for D&D is good for the hobby. I guess that's always a way to look at it. Now, the anticipated list of RPGs for 2022 and 2023, you talked about one last week, Drac, Frosthaven. That was like kind of the number one on everybody's list for 2023. And I'm not a Frosthaven, Gloomhaven fan, so you're going to have to tell me what that one's all about.
It is a fantasy world. Like Gloomhaven is basically your dungeon crawl. From beginning to end, you start your character, you build your character, it grows as you play. And then Frosthaven is kind of a standalone adventure to Gloomhaven. It's set in a totally different world, but the mechanics and the games play the same as Gloomhaven. And it's a city that is in the winter. So hence the name Frosthaven is the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys in my gaming group plays Gloomhaven, and he raves about it.
Gloomhaven is so good. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, with COVID going on and stuff like that, it's just something I haven't been exposed to yet. No pun intended. So next time I get this list here that in the show notes here, the next one I got was a weird one, but and Drac, I don't know if you know about Sky Raiders of Aberrax.
No, I have never heard of this. I saw it in the show notes and I'm like, what the heck is this?
This is based on a book from Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman.
Okay.
And somebody's turning it into a role-playing game. So I kind of flagged it because I knew about the book, but I didn't know it was going to be a role-playing game. But there's a lot of people that are excited about it because people like Tracy and Margaret's stuff. I mean, Dragonlance is the perfect example for that. So that was kind of one I wanted to look at. Cyborg is like Cyber Merkbore. So you got, it kind of follows the whole Cyberpunk Red, but more violent, end of the world type of
which
thing.
I wasn't familiar with this one either. I'm not sure how this.
That one just finished Kickstarter a couple of months ago. The one that I had not heard of yet was this Mothership First 1E, which is kind of like, I'm going to say, kind of like Aliens, the Aliens RPG. It's supposed to be horror out in space. I had not caught this one, but it showed up on a lot of the lists of anticipated stuff for 2022, and it showed up in 2022. It's going to probably not fulfill until early next year, and a lot of these things on this list are kind of like that, which includes my next one, the Pendragon RPG. Now that's Pendragon's 6th edition RPG. So Pendragon is old role-playing back in from like D&D got popular, and then people were trying to come up with other game systems, and Pendragon was one of them, which has its roots in HeroQuest and RuneQuest.
Interesting. Okay.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Pendragon, but it's just what it sounds like: Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, all that kind of stuff. Blades in the Dark is another one that hangs out there as being a popular one from this year. I've watched guys play it on Twitch, but I kind of don't understand it very well. I don't know if you've had any exposure to Blades in the Dark.
I looked at the Kickstarter. It looked interesting, but
yeah, there's some people that really like it. It's kind of like, I don't know, thieves, assassins, adventuring type of thing. From what I understand, I could be wrong. That was the gist I got of it. What I watched, Cyberpunk Red. Cyberpunk. Everybody knows Cyberpunk. If you've been around role playing for a while, and this is Cyberpunk Red was the new version. It kind of made a big hit earlier in the year, probably along with. Did the video game come out this year?
Yes.
Okay, so it was kind of a conjunction thing with the video game. There's people that love the Cyberpunk universe. I remember when it first came out, they had all the LARPers at Gen Con all the time, and back in the day, that was always fun. Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, so that kind of hit the airwaves this year.
Looking at my book right now, it's right over there.
Oh, very good. I actually invested in the previous edition, the kind of the rebuild one, and we actually played it for a little bit, but I could never get enough people interested in it. So, and then the last thing on my anticipated list is the Level Up books for Advanced 5th edition. Now, those are put out by Russell Morrissey, who runs Ian World, and his design teams. And it's for the people that I know that have looked at it, and one gentleman I know who really likes it. He says if you're really invested in 5th edition, these are great books because they do better expansions of the game than, because WotC isn't expanding the game very much other than Natasha's book and some stuff in some of the other ones.
Right.
But this one gets kind of a little bit more gritty. It adds more rules, more opportunities, more things that you can do with your character. A lot of people like it. So if you really want to invest in 5th edition, if 1 D&D doesn't impress you, or, there's people that never played 4th or even 5th edition because they spent so much money on 3rd edition book. They're like, I ain't spending more money.
Exactly.
So that was something for me kind of to look at. And then, I'll let you do your Kickstarters then, Drac.
Okay. I didn't do a lot of RPG Kickstarters. I did more tabletop board games. It would be a whole other hour of the show to talk about those. I have a Kickstarter problem, but that's besides the point. I did the Monty Python, of course. Did the One Ring second edition, of course, which is set in the Tolkien universe, which hence the name The One Ring. And then my one I got in towards the end of the year that caught me by surprise. I didn't know anything about it until it was almost over, and I'm so glad I got into it, was the Stokerverse role-playing game, which is set in the world of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, and I saw that it showed up on my Facebook feed, and it says, "Do you know about this?" And you're going, "You damn right."
Yeah. I had just back. Like, it was funny when you sent me that text. I had just backed it probably a day before that, and I'm like, "Yeah, I am so excited for that." Yeah, it looks so good. So so that's all the RPGs I did. I didn't do a lot of RPGs this year.
So the One Ring one is kind of I have an opinion on that one. So I actually liked the Middle Earth role playing from Catalyst.
Yes.
I at the time I didn't have time to play, but my gaming group was running that, and they really liked it. But now that's gone. But remember, there was a whole One Ring first edition that had all the splat books, and they were gorgeous.
They were, yes.
I mean, the art in them was great. They had maps that were just spectacular, and I'm glad they have the second edition, but I kind of read through the starter set rules, and I guess to me it read a little flat.
Which the second edition is now done by a whole new company. It's done by Free League, actually, is the one that's doing One Ring. Yeah. They picked up the license, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's not fifth edition like the Middle Earth role playing was. But apparently some of the stuff is interchangeable, and I'm sure there might be some guy out there that's writing up conversions and back and forth.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
So I mean, maybe that's something that would be available if you really like Lord of the Rings. And then I got a quick list of games that are coming out in 2023. Now this is either kickstarting or these are fulfillments from Kickstarters this year, but this will be like a couple of months into 2023. So you got the Gloomhaven role-playing game, which apparently is in the works right now. I don't know if you knew anybody that was playing 13th Age, Drac.
No.
I knew one guy that was interested in it, and then he couldn't find anybody else to play it.
That's kind of how I was. I knew somebody that would want to play it, but he was the only one that wanted to play it. So
yeah, I mean it's kind of a die 20 variant system, if I remember correctly.
It was pretty popular for a while.
Yeah, it was. So they're coming out with a second edition for that. The Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, which we actually talked about on a show a while back.
Excited about that too, yeah.
Yeah, I really want to be a player in that. I did purchase the playtest book for $10. I mean, $10. Come on. It looks intriguing. I know that they've made a ton of changes since that book came out. But I'm hoping if I don't talk to Matt Forbick at GaryCon, I'm hoping that they might have like demos or something that we can play at GaryCon. They don't have the events out just yet. Then the Paranoia Perfect Edition from Mongoose is supposed to hit store shelves next year for people who need a break from serious role playing. And then the Walking Dead RPG, which was just announced a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been zombie games out there before. I can't remember. What's the company that put out the Buffy the Vampire Slayer game? And they had their own zombie role-playing game back in the Die 20 days, and that was pretty popular. So it'd be interesting to see, what system they use. It might be a fresh system. It might be a variant of something else.
Eden Studios is who that was.
Eden Studios, that's it. Yep. But those are stuff coming out for. I did want to say one thing. So the Avatar Legends Kickstarter. maybe people don't know about this. There's this new thing out there called Demiplane Nexus.
I have never heard of this before.
Demiplane, www.demiplane.com. And I didn't either until I got into the Kickstarter for Avatar Legends. So what it is, and I'll actually go into my Avatar Legends account on Demiplane. I get the free code as part of the stretch goals, and it has the core book and all the chapters of the core book and anything that you had in your Kickstarter available on content through a web page. So you don't necessarily have to have the book. And you can just, if I was running this online, I would probably use this web browser to access the rules and other things. So it basically puts the core books in here. They also have things like, they're going to be developing things like character generators. You know, you can do full rule searches through the book. Like if you had the PDF and you were to do a search, tool tips, and things like that. They also have a lot of different other games. They have Pathfinder's getting in there. The Marvel RPG is getting in there. And the Aliens RPG, which I'm going to be playing in a few weeks, or actually running. And other Free League games are also in there. And I'm sure they're soliciting other companies. I thought it was pretty cool. It was something that nobody was doing, really. Rules online. I mean, if you're playing WotC D&D, you have D&D Beyond. This is kind of like the non-D&D alternative to D&D Beyond. So I can see this tool very much becoming like D&D Beyond in a few years. But it just launched it had to be this last year. So
I'm not sure how that flew under my radar, but yeah, I had no idea this was even a thing.
I didn't know about it until Avatar Legends, and then not long after that, Pathfinder and Starfinder were added to that. So that must be part of their licensing agreement with Paizo. And then the Marvel Universe one kind of surprised me too. So that's kind of cool. So I mean, out of all those, hey, if you got a licensing agreement with Marvel, that says something.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah, because they don't hand those out to just everybody. So that's kind of cool. And then my last note on 2022 and 2023. Have you even looked at the 1D&D stuff, Drac? Because I haven't.
I have not. A little bit. I've glanced at some stuff, and I'm like, so well, yeah. I mean,
my friends that have looked at it. I mean, you've heard. I mean, we've all heard some of the changes they're making. Oh, there's the word race is gone. It's going to be species and this, that, and the other thing. So
I'm biting my tongue as we talk about this.
Yep.
But continue.
Well, you know what? I'll say something about that. I'll say this much. I get it. Okay, I understand why they're doing it, and you know what? If it makes one D&D player more comfortable about playing D&D or brings more people into the hobby, I'll be the first person. I'm all for that.
I am all for that too.
Right.
Fine.
But my stance on it is I wish we lived in a society where we didn't have to do that kind of stuff.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah. So, but I get it. And if WotC wants to be the leader in being the most politically correct and most popular game out there, more power to them. I'm not gonna say no. This is a dumb idea. What are you doing this for? This doesn't make any sense. If it keeps the hobby alive and keeps it going, because honestly, there was a point in time where D&D was struggling. I mean, look what happened to TSR. And then things like the SRD and the Open Gaming License kind of opened up D&D, and then Hasbro came along and dumped millions into it, and look where we are. Now we got a movie coming out in a couple months that hopefully won't suck. So
I hope not. I'm so looking forward to that movie. Please don't suck.
Yeah, because it looks pretty cool, I will admit. But anyway, I get it. Now, some of the stuff that I've heard that they're doing in 1D&D it sounds okay only because it's stuff that's been around already. They're actually doing a couple things that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is doing. They're doing a couple things that other gaming systems are doing and trying to make D&D different. My biggest problem with it is the same problem that everybody has with going to a new edition. You got to spend more money on books, more money on this, or hey, now your favorite D&D thing is now in a whole has been completely revamped, and now it's over here doing this where before it was over here doing this. Will people? I mean, it's still got 2 years before it's out, ish.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll probably be Gen Con 2024. But people will probably start getting copies of the rules months before
they
that.
They even show up to Gen Con, but that's a whole other conversation too.
Yeah. Well, I think for something as big as a new edition launch, they probably will. At least in I mean, it's not like the old days. I mean, where we had the biggest booth on the floor and everything else. I mean, those days are gone. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Will I pick it up? Maybe I'll pick up the player's book. But I don't know. It's going to have to really impress for me to go out and spend, more than $100 on it, to be quite frank. But that's just me. So,
and I kind of don't like how they're tying a lot of it into D&D Beyond too.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. So I was on the Fantasy Grounds forums before we went on the show here, and one of the things so I actually stumbled across a posting regarding Shadow of the Dragon Queen. And there was a guy complaining because they only had GM maps in the Fantasy Grounds conversion. And the Fantasy Grounds staff came back and said, yeah, we only got copies of the GM maps from WotC. And the guy goes, hey, well, they're in D&D Beyond. Why can't you have them in your product?
Well, you just answered your own question.
Right. So is D&D Beyond going to be the new hotsy-totsy thing to link in with D&D? Probably, because
I'm pretty sure
Hasbro owns them now, and they're throwing millions of bucks at them. Now, does that mean licensing for the other VTTs are going to go away? Probably not. But they're always going to give preference to what they own over what they
Right. No, I mean, it makes sense. I know why they're doing it. I'm just not happy with them doing it.
Yeah. But I mean, I also saw something about numbers on D&D Beyond, because you can have a free account on D&D Beyond.
Yeah, I have the free account.
I think most people have the free account.
Yeah, I would like to see actual numbers on free versus the paid.
Yeah. So
I really would.
But those are numbers that we'll probably never see.
Right. No. I said WotC. Hasbro I don't think will ever release that.
Yeah. So that's kind of my year in gaming. I mean, like I said, there's not a lot of D&D stuff on there, but I think there's a lot of cool games out there that play really well, that are worth checking out. And for a guy like me who's been playing D&D for over 40 years officially this year, D&D can get kind of boring sometimes, and sometimes jumping into one of these other game systems can be a fresh alternative. Will you always go back to your old girlfriend? Sure.
Of course you will. Right.
Yeah. But role-playing games are more than D&D. And I've learned that it's kind of something I've learned more and more every year, right? I look at my gaming shelf and I'm like, God, there's a lot of D&D in there, but there's a lot of other cool things in there too that I want to start playing. So
the RPG hobby definitely is not dead. That is for sure.
Right. It is getting more expensive though.
Yeah, that it is.
So anyway, so that was what I had.
All right. We will jump quickly to On the Screen. Where we did recently learn that Baldur's Gate 3, which it's been a while since we've talked about that on the show, it is actually going to leave early access and launch fully in August of 2023. It's going to be available on Steam and on GOG, and there's also going to be a collector's edition that they announced. Oh my God. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, the picture of this is going to be on the screen. In the collector's edition, one of the things you're getting is a Mind Flayer versus a Drow battle diorama. It looks freaking amazing.
So I think with the success of Elden Ring, I think there's a really high bar out there now for fantasy computer games. So I'm hoping that Baldur's Gate, because I played Baldur's Gate 1 and didn't play 2. but it's been a while. I think I actually might have the CD sitting around here somewhere. But I
did too. I'm staring at them right now too.
Yeah, I think Elden Ring really set the bar for.
Yeah, I agree.
That.
Yeah,
but then, is it going to be okay? So, did you play any of the Pathfinder games?
Yeah, I started to. I need to jump back into it. The first one.
So there was Kingmaker, and then
Kingmaker. That one.
War of the Righteous, is that the next one?
Yeah, that one I have not played. I played a little bit of the other one, and then I kind of stopped it because I started playing some other stuff. I need to jump back into it because that Pathfinder was done well.
Yeah. Is Baldur's Gate 3 going to be like that, where you're actually playing D&D characters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
That's cool.
The only... And it's been a while, spoiler alert for Weekend Gaming, since I played this until recently. I did reinstall it. So I got to see how much it's changed. When I first started playing it is when it hit early like access. Like it had only been out maybe a month, and it was a bug-filled mess. And my biggest problem with it, I did talk about this on the show several times, was combat was painfully slow. Okay. But I don't know if that's been updated or changed. A lot has changed since the last time I played it. So I just recently reinstalled it. Haven't played much of it yet, but we'll see. So yeah. And they are going to do a Twitch stream on December the 14th. It's going to be called Panel from Hell Holy Night. That is going to be over on Lyrian Studios Twitch stream. They are going to talk about the game, dig a little deeper into it, and also give you some more announcements on some other character classes and stuff that are coming to the game. But yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 finally coming out of early access in August.
I might have to. I don't play computer games anymore. I mean, I barely have time for DDO. But that's getting me. I mean, I've seen guys stream Elden Ring. And I watched a gentleman stream the Kingmaker one because he got halfway through it and quit. Then it started over again because he said, I got to a point where I knew I was going to lose and I wanted to win. So we had to start over again because you always figure out something your second time through. Right.
Exactly.
But then I watch people play Elden Ring and I'm like, God, it looks so gorgeous.
I need to buy Elden Ring yet. Yeah. I so want it now that I have a computer that can actually play it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's that actually might get me back in the computer gaming genre for a while.
Speaking of gaming, that is a good segue into our week in gaming. I did, as I said, kind of hinted at. Well, I guess I didn't hint at. I said it. Yeah, I reinstalled Baldur's Gate 3. I started completely over because I couldn't remember where I was, and so much had changed. And I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to start over. I created a character, and that's as far as I got. So I haven't even started playing yet. So I'm kind of interested to see the changes that they've made. Because like I said, last time I played was a long time ago, and it was a bug-riddled mess, which for a early access game, you have to expect that. But they've done a lot of polishing and a lot of updates since the last time I played. So,
what's the company doing that?
Lyrian Studios.
Okay, what have they done before?
They have done Divine Divinity, Divinity 2.
That I've heard of.
Yes. And then they've done like a bunch of they started out doing like kids educational games. And then they went from kids' educational games into the RPGs and the Divinity series, which is what they're mainly known for.
Cool.
So,
well, again, if like Marvel, if WotC gives you a license to do a computer game, boy, you better be on your toes.
Yeah, and if nobody has ever played Divinity, do yourself a favor and play that. Divinity was D&D without it being D&D. Like it was, you could tell they were making a D&D game, but they didn't have a license for D&D. but it played just like a D&D RPG.
Isn't that what happened with the Planescape computer game?
Yes.
Years ago?
Yes. Okay. Yep. It's the same thing, exactly.
Got it. Cool.
So yeah, and then I played a little bit more of Resident Evil Village, once again, since I actually have a computer that can play it. Not a slideshow anymore like it used to be. And that's it. Haven't done a lot. Of course, it hasn't been that long since we recorded last podcast, so therefore I didn't have a lot of time to play stuff. So how about you, Mr. Beeker?
Well, I haven't been playing as much DDO as I want. So in the show notes, it says DDO boo.
Me neither. I want to play more DDO too.
Yeah. So, well, you're supposed to be playing with Patrick on Tuesdays.
Yes. We're actually going to play tomorrow night, which we're recording this on Saturday. So we're going to play on Sunday night this week. And then
I'll have to check it out.
We're eventually going to get back onto Tuesday
I
night.
wish I had. I haven't even bought the Isle of Dread yet, only because, and I'll kind of, there's something I want to say regarding that. So,
okay.
So probably people have figured out by now, it's been a year and a half since I've been on the show last.
Just about. I would have to look it up, but that's when
it was when Van Richten's Guide came out.
Yeah,
we did the show.
Yep.
So after the first year, I decided to retire from streaming. There was a few reasons for that. I had some players leave some of my games, and my job was being a pain, and I've actually switched jobs since then. I've also was literally in some pain with my knee, and as Drac knows, September and October and part of November was my recovery from having my knee replaced. So I had a lot going on, and I kind of decided I didn't want to stream any longer. However, the games that we've been all but two of my games I kind of canceled, and that was just from being busy with the new job and things at home, being busy, and my knee bothering me. And but one of the games that we are still playing, although we took a break while I was recovering from my knee surgery, is we still are playing the Waterdeep Dwarves game. So Drac said on last week's show that he was playing a 5th edition game. He didn't name it, but
spoiler alert, it was Waterdeep.
It was Waterdeep.
Yeah, I had to make sure that you were okay with that. So yeah,
I'm fine with it.
All right, yes.
We found some new players. We're playing at a different time that's more suitable for myself. And we kind of started up again, and I think we're doing good. It's a game that I really want to play as long as we can play it.
Me too. It is so fun.
It's a lot of fun, and I'm sorry that some of the players left.
Me too. I wish they were still playing with us, but
yep, boy, if I had one campaign that had the same players for ever, I would be amazed, because that's not how gaming works.
Right, exactly.
But, people move away, or you have disagreements or whatever, but I'm sorry that we can't be streaming anymore, and I don't think, maybe someday again I'll stream. I'm not recording the offline shows anymore. I did do the first 2, I think. But yeah, so we played that last Sunday. And then, like I mentioned a couple times, I'm in several Pathfinder games. I run 2 of them. I run a 2nd edition and a 1st edition game. I play in a 1st edition game. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be playing some Old School Essentials, and I got to talk to you about that, because they now have tieflings and necromancers in Old School Essentials.
Ooh, tell me more.
With the new Kickstarter rules.
Well, then.
And over the holidays, when a lot of us have long weekends off, I am going to be running. So for years, let me preface this. For years, I've really wanted to run a science fiction game. I bought the Starfinder stuff, but I can't find anybody that's willing to commit to those, because those are more adventure path type of things, long-term. We're already playing several long-term Pathfinder games. You can run shorter games in Starfinder, but one that kind of caught my eye, and I got in and on the Humble Bundle. By the way, check out Humble Bundles and Bundles of Holding, because there's some good shit in there.
There is. You can get a lot of stuff.
Excuse my French.
You can say shit. It's fine.
Okay. In fact, there's a Humble Bundle. I think it's still going on right now that has like all of Neil Gaiman's graphic novels in it.
And I usually tend to post about them if I see them, like anything RPG related or anything that I think the audience would like. I do tend to post about those.
Yeah, so. and I got it only because I have physical copies of about half of them, but half of them I was missing, and I'm like, you can't find those anymore anywhere in physical copies.
Right? Exactly.
It's just impossible. But anyway, so on the Humble Bundle, I picked up the Alien RPG from Free League, and I love it. I don't have all of the products because they didn't offer them all, but I did pick up the starter set. And I love it, and we're going to play it over the in the next coming couple of weeks. And I hope
excellent.
I hope we'll be there'll be stories to be told from that fun stuff. But yeah, so I've been actually reading up a lot on that and making notes and setting everything up, and actually, since I have the PDFs only, I'm actually printing my own alien dice because with my 3D printer, because
of course you are.
There's actually special dice that you need for
that's amazing. That's awesome.
So yeah, that's about all I'm doing.
All right, let's jump into our Patreon, where we have 15 supporters currently. If you would like to help support DDO players and maybe win a red dragon, simply go to the donations page where you can support the Players Alliance, which is the podcast network we are a part of. The money is used for all of our podcast hosting, website hosting, and to pay for the live shows and all the other bills that occur with running 2 websites and a podcast. If you would like to donate without using Patreon, if you don't want to donate every month, that's cool. Shoot me an email, drac@ddoplayers.com, and we'll talk about it. A couple people have done that already. So not a problem at all. We don't have any reviews over on any of the podcast apps of your choice. If you do leave us a review, please let us know. Any review that we get, I will talk about it on the air. And all those reviews do help us on that podcast app of choice because it helps push us up in the rankings. And then we have no featured comments and no emails. Our email is podcast@ddoplayers.com. The Players Alliance is on Twitter @PlayersAlly. DDO Players is @DDO Players. I'm at Dracula_72. Pineleaf, who normally hosts the show, is at Pineleaf Needles. And then you want to give your Twitter or anything?
Boy, I can't remember the last time I was on Twitter.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't go on Twitter a lot either. I just have stuff automatically post. That's about all I do anymore.
Yeah, I've been very lax in my posting. I do have an Instagram page, Evilbeeker Gaming. I post a lot of my 3D printed stuff there. But since I had my knee replaced, I've been not doing as much as I would like to. Let me tell you, if you're old and you have your knee replaced, it's great. I'm not in any pain anymore, but man, oh man, is it a pain for a couple months.
I bet it is.
So maybe look for stuff after the first of the year.
Okay, perfect. And then once again, I will link your Etsy store and all of that in the giveaway post that is coming soon to the site. So stay tuned for that. We do have 2 live shows. Normally the show is live on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. It depends on my schedule. You guys know the drill. On Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Every Saturday. God love the Lotro Players staff. They are on it every week, and that podcast goes on at 8:30 every Saturday night. God love those people that host that show for me because I don't know how they do it every week, but they are great. You can find our live show normally at ddoplayers.com/live. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Evilbeeker?
Yeah, actually, did Pineleaf give away that other 3D print that I sent you?
No, I'm going to set that up too as well. And that's going to be on our sister site, lotroplayers.com. We're going to have a giveaway over there too. Yeah,
look for a really cool 3D print, Lotro themed 3D print.
Yes, if you're into Lord of the Rings, Lotro, Tolkien, check out our sister site, lotroplayers.com. Because, it's pretty flippin' amazing. We're going to give that away over there.
I couldn't sell that one, but I couldn't not print it.
Right. It's flipping amazing. So yeah. So look for that over.
No, other than thank you for having me on, and
no problem. Thanks for coming on. I've been trying to get you on for a long time. So
well, Drac. So I went back and listened to the last podcast, or the first podcast that we did together, and in that podcast you said you guys were going to review comic books.
I know.
Now I've been collecting comic books since I was 9 years old.
I have all these grand plans for the site, and then, yeah.
So if you ever
I promise we'll have comic book content.
If you ever change your mind, that would be a topic I could contribute to.
I'm writing that down right now. Bring Beeker back on for some comic book shows. Gotcha. Okay, that is on the sheet of paper in front of me right now. So
cool.
We will get that. All right. We are going to wrap it up for tonight. Thanks for joining us. It was a long show, but I think it was a great show. Lots of Dragonlance talk. So tell anybody that was a Dragonlance fan, if you're a Dragonlance fan, tell everybody about this show and share it with them. We would appreciate it. So let's wrap this up with what I always say. I hope the RNG is a lot kinder to you than it always is to me. And Beeker can attest to that because he's seen it.
Yeah.